Hey, okay guys, so I'm back with part two, and it's taken me a little longer than I wanted to make this video. That picture of Donald Trump cracks me up. He looks like a guy named Juan I once knew or something. Like, he just looks so different. Anyway, that said, so I'm doing these videos, number one, not only to just explore what the Trump administration is doing while we're not looking during this whole pandemic thing and now race rioting thing, which that's a whole other video for another time. I'm still going to keep on talking about the pandemic thing. Again, just for me, the mere fact that this president is the president to helm up and believe in conspiracies and say he's exposing conspiracy theories is like, I would have to exercise so much cognitive dissonance to even believe that he was true in what he was saying. I mean, he's an elite, he's a billionaire. And my stance is that I believe that the millionaires and billionaires are helming and have hijacked the truther movement. And what they want to do is distract you. They want to give you misinformation or disinformation. They want to give you some truths in there, but a lot of it's misinformation and disinformation, and they want to distract you. They care mostly in terms of their videos about clicks and views. They want to divide and conquer the 99% and have us blame each other rather than looking to the elite to blame them, and distract our attention. Now, don't be fooled by the fact that some truther channels, some seemingly mainstream truther channels bag on Trump. They've got to both sides it. They got to cover all their bases because they know that some people are smart enough to see the bullshit. That said, I do like this. Donald Trump's personality is pretty much out in plain sight. And we all know that that is a concept within the truther movement with which we are all familiar. Truth in plain sight. Kind of like when those buildings, you could tell they didn't fall, or that they did fall from a controlled demolition in 9/11. If it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it is a duck, and Trump is that duck. Trump is the same kind of duck as the controlled demolition. Only with truck, they're using another word that ends in UCK to refer to him. A lot of people are. I'm not saying he's the only one, and I'm not saying that people aren't vying for alternate agendas. I don't think Trump's agenda is the only game in town. I think there are people that want to just shut things down and take away our rights. I think Trump has other goals in mind, in particular that he wants to, this whole virus ruined his precious economy. I do like what it says under the picture. The election is rigged unless I win. The news is fake unless it's flattering. Everything is a hoax unless I tweet it. Or unless it's news that's flattering to him. Which actually, on a side note, makes me want to believe the mainstream media a little bit more because he's so opposed to it. And at least the mainstream media versus the conspiracy theory industry, at least the mainstream media is held to somewhat of a higher standard and account because they have fact checkers, they have legal obligations. Like mainstream truther videos posted on YouTube, they're not really necessarily accountable to anyone. I mean, I don't know if any of them have been sued for defamation, but even still, they're not necessarily accountable. And of course, I'm not a legal expert either, but this is my thing. Truth or skirting of the truth and truther videos can go way, way under the radar. Like nobody will be any the wiser if it's not true. And half the time you can't prove it anyway. So anyway, unless I tweet it, nepotism is bad unless it's my family. And that's so, oh my God, he gives so much power to Jared Kushner. It's scary. I'm the most transparent president, but you can't see my taxes. I have the best people until I fire them. Hey, my Trump impression's getting better. That ain't so bad. So anyway, I'm using old school techniques. I'm using my own discernment to kind of like figure what I feel like is correct just instinctually. It doesn't mean it's fact. It doesn't mean I'm trying to necessarily convince you. I'm trying to, get it to be seen from different angles. I don't like the red pilling and blue pilling. I'm trying to get us into it like a purple grapefruit we can all look at in terms of that angle, in terms of like how we can see what could come out of this pandemic. And of course, the last thing is I'm just going to try and tell you and show you what the Trump administration is doing and how they're using it to their advantage during this whole pandemic. So what I'm trying to do is go through the news, go through headlines, go through articles, and look for other angles at which to explore this. It's kind of like the old school back of the paper below the fold. those articles that are back of the paper below the fold. Now, I know you can't prove which articles anymore are back of the paper below the fold on the internet, but it's the equivalent of that. I'm looking at headlines. I'm looking at actions versus words. I'm looking at headlines versus content, trying to see discrepancies there. And so I'm trying to call out misinformation, because a lot of these conspiracies this day and age, it's a lot of misinformation. And again, it's because these people do not care about you. They want your head in the sand. Anyway, again, I'm sure this will be one of my more controversial videos, but that said, I need to call it out. Okay, so this is a comment that I made under a video wherein it discussed the blue pill versus the red pill, and basically I just said, ugh, too many people taking too many pills. And this was basically referring to people who believed in the mainstream media and were afraid of the disease as the blue pill people, and this channel only kind of made fun of the blue pill people, and then the red pill people were the ones who wanted to go back to work for the same wages. I mean, nobody calls out the wages that they were making before. They just want to go back to work for the man. So the red pill people who just want to go back to work. And of course, I can see that. Like, I can see both arguments, because both arguments fly. People are scared. I want to be compassionate with people right now. I really do. And I see both concerns. And I think we could have done this at a happy medium pace, but, you know, people on both sides of the government don't always care. So, that said, what I said about this video is, ugh, too many people taking too many pills, both red and blue, a sure sign of a false dichotomy. You know, Republican versus Democrat. And I'm talking establishment Republicans and Democrats whose only job it is really is to ensure that we continue fighting wars, we continue lowering taxes for the millionaires and billionaires, and basically they're essentially overlords of society. And they just keep a society going the way it's been going and maintain the status quo. The gatekeepers, if you will, for the most part. I mean, there's some things that waver, you know, sometimes they do a good thing. But anyway, so ugh, too many people taking too many pills, both red and blue, a sure sign of false dichotomy. And while we're all busy judging each other for either fearing a contagious, sometimes deadly virus and or fearing the curtailments of our rights, both logical and fearful reactions, we are missing the mark on what and whom we should really be judging and changing. Think about it, and I'm going to get to that. So that was my first point. My second point is I just hate how we're all judging each other for wearing masks, not wearing masks. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I do wear the mask. It's the least I could do. Wearing a mask does, you know, for all intents and purposes, mitigate viral load. In other words, it does not keep your breath in your mask, of course, but it helps slow it down. So I'll do it. I myself do not consider it a violation of my rights, but I'm also not going to judge other people for not wearing it. I'm just not going to get incredibly close to them. But I feel like, you know, this is my rule. It's the Jeff Goldblum rule. I don't always maintain it, but essentially I just posted on Facebook, totally, like, every time I go out, I've been trying to picture a really tall guy between myself and my neighbor, give or take about 4 inches. I've coined it the approximate length of one Jeff Goldblum. Meantime, and that said, please stay one Jeff Goldblum away from me at all times. Now, really, you know, if you educate yourself on the virus, you do find that there is some wiggle room. And to be perfectly honest, whenever I go on the internet and educate myself about diseases, usually I feel a little bit better because I have more knowledge. You know, whatever kind of illness it is, it's like, okay, I know what symptoms are germane, what symptoms do not apply, how to prevent it better. So I actually I'm one of these weirdos that actually thinks Googling diseases and symptoms is a good thing. I think the medical industrial complex doesn't like you to do that because they want you to come into the doctor and spend money. But, you know, so that's on the other side of the spectrum. But yes. So, but what I hate is that, like, now, like, people who wear masks, the way people who wear masks treat people who don't wear masks is ridiculous. Like, the other day, I was out, I have my mask on, I was just sitting at my customary little place that I like to sit, taking a break from my walk under my tree. This lady, a Karen, oh my God, a Karen, here, I'll show you the Karen. Where's Karen? Oh shoot, you know what, I don't think I included her. I'll show you the Karen later on. But this Karen, like, walked by me, and first she walked by these two other people who were out exercising or whatever, and they weren't wearing masks. And you know what? I can actually understand that. It's like, I don't really like exercising with a mask on either. So I used to not do that, but then I was shamed one too many times for not wearing a mask. So I'm like, fuck it, I'll just wear it, whatever. And I don't really do the jogging thing anymore because my knees are bothering me. But regardless, speed walking is okay. And sometimes I'll take it off, especially if I'm outside to like eat or drink or whatever. Fuck it. So anyway, I was just sitting wearing my mask, and this Karen walks by. She's like speed walking, and these two other people walk past her, and they're not wearing masks. So this motherfucker, she like coughs. She starts fucking coughing, and I'm like, dude. And then she looks at me as if I'm gonna take her side, and she coughs my direction, and she like shrugs her shoulders and looks at me, and I don't do anything. Although in retrospect, I probably should have just given her the finger. It's like, oh my god, Gladys Kravitz. Gladys Kravitz from Bewitched. It's like, take your Gladys Kravitz and shove it up your ass. And cram it up your ass, I just say. Gladys Kravitz. But anyway, so she walks past, and I'm like, what the fuck? And not only that, it's like, she's coughing in my direction now. Like, as if that's some sort of bat signal. Well, of course, with this virus, bat is appropriate, I suppose. And I'm just like, no, I'm not going to side with you. And frankly, again, I'm not that worried about it, knock on wood, because we're outside. We're not spending 5 to 10 minutes in close proximity, which is really how the virus gets passed. And I'm also really glad that they did a study about how it's not on surfaces. Like, you can't get it as easily from surfaces. So this is where knowledge is good. This is where knowledge is empowerment. It can help us calm down a little bit. So this is why I never discourage getting more knowledge about illnesses and diseases, because sometimes it can be a really good thing. So I'm more calm about it. In other words, I'm not judging people for wearing masks. I'm not being a general bitch and a Karen whenever I go out. And frankly, if somebody wants to come and pick these people up, I'd rather they didn't. I don't think they pick them up. I think it's a fine if they do. But it's a rule, it's not a law. Rules and laws are different, and the city can impose rules in a time of emergency. So they can do that legally. But anyway, so it's just not my business, I'm not a busybody, I'm not going to do that. Oh man, but you red pill Karens, take the cake. Oh, you are so woke and so hip and so edgy. Yeah. You go to your local grocery store and tell all those minimum wage workers and mid-wage workers how to do their jobs. Because what did they do? Like, what did they do before they talked to you? I'm sure they are so appreciative of you telling them of what your rights are, all the while expecting them to forfeit theirs. In other words, no shoes, no shirt, no service, although maybe if you took your shirt off, they'd let you go in without a mask. I don't know. Of course, you'd have to suffer the wrath of all those blue pill people. But, whatever. I'm sure the manager will be so glad when you tell him of all the YouTube videos you watch. You'll be like, oh my God, I never knew. How did you get so enlightened? How did you do it? My God, you know more than my doctor, you know more than the health department, you know more than the lawyers know about the policies in my store, all these things. Really? The COVID-19 is caused by 5G? But it's also a hoax? How do they do it? Well, let me tell you something. Those people are on our front lines. Without them, you would not get fed. Or you'd be sitting in lines at food banks that look like this. Oh yes, this is a line from people at food banks. It's hard on everybody right now. And those people, that mask again is designed to keep the virus in next to you. It's designed to mitigate viral load. It's not designed to be a fail-safe. It's not designed to stop the virus. Nobody ever said that, although people are treating it as if people did say that. But anyway, hey man, if worse comes to worse, and you did go in there without a mask, a blue pill person would probably pounce on you. But if even worse came to worse, I should say best came to best, think of it this way. Some of the red pill people really, really do not like Obama. I'm not saying all of them, but one of our lovely California council members wrote, the Obama administration secretly installed cameras in all public places. They're tracking you with facial recognition technology. Wear a mask that covers your mouth and nose so you can't be tracked. Please retweet and like to spread to all the true patriots. So there you go. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise while you get to be in disguise while you do your food shopping. So, just a thought. And of course, if you'll notice too, for all the things Trump wants to undo of Obama's, he's not undoing this. Just saying. And don't even get me started on the bought and paid for gun-toting Karen's message of the same ilk. But I don't think it was really necessary. I think people really do want to get back to work. And I think there are a lot of good reasons for it, but I also think that the government's trying to snow us in the financial aspect of it, which I will get to soon. But that said, and I'm not meaning to, again, I'm just being kind of tongue in cheek here, but I do think, again, like I said, that both sides have a point. It's just that when they get really, really exercised, they tend to go out of their line of rational thinking, and they tend to get out of their line of being courteous to others, both with a mask, both without a mask, both wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, and just treating each other like shit. So that's just something we really have to be mindful of, on top of looking to a third option. So that's my say on the Karens. Bump to go. And I probably shouldn't like the term Karen, but Karen hasn't worn out for me yet. Plus, I think it's kind of funny. All right. So that said, one Jeff Goldblum away, outside, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, it's all good. So, all right. So the next thing I talked about was Plandemic. I basically debunked it with these 4 points. Point number 1, I have 2 nurses as friends. They confirmed this. And also, 2, the masks are not that tight. Judy Mikovits proclaims you can reinfect yourself with a virus with a mask. And also, too, if that were true, wouldn't you, if you slept face down at night, wouldn't they be telling people not to sleep face down at night? Because then you could reinfect yourself with your own pillow. As a matter of fact, your pillow and your pillowcase are probably way more airtight than any freaking mask that you would wear. So that's bullshit, and my nurse friends confirmed that, which seems correct because also those masks are pretty airy. 2, she's basically parroting what many, including Trump, has been saying for weeks now. The virus is man-made, escaped from a lab, and I don't really give a shit if it escaped from a lab. Although I do have a theory on that. Not a theory, but just a thought. I mean, here's the stupid thing. It's like Donald Trump, it took him forever to take the virus seriously. And now all he wants to do is blame China. And I will blame Donald Trump for a lot of things, including shilling out these new agey conspiracy theories that we're all supposed to abide by, and making conspiracy theories mainstream. Because Donald Trump doesn't care about you. Donald Trump only cares about himself. So any conspiracy theory that's going to benefit him is just great. So regardless, a broken clock is right twice a day. Donald Trump may be right about the virus escaping from a Wuhan lab. And I don't consider that necessarily disinformation, more like speculation, but he's really hammering it home. But my point with that is first of all, when he is trying to tell us that China didn't tell us and they didn't do their due diligence and this, that, or the other thing, my problem with that is first of all, I don't buy it, because we have intelligence. We have intelligence agencies. We have intelligence on the ground in other countries. So if I knew by the evening of December 31st that there was a horrible coronavirus outbreak in China, then our intelligence agencies knew that and then some. And they probably knew just how devastating it was and how they were quarantining everyone. I mean, devastating in quotes, because I know some people don't really think it's that devastating or a thing. But I myself am going to err on the side of caution. So whatever, it doesn't really trip me out. So she's basically parroting what many, including Trump, has been saying for weeks now, that the virus is man-made, escaped from a lab. While this claim is not the part with which I have contention, the notion that the government is trying so hard to hide it from you, when Trump himself and right-wing radio hosts have already speculated it ad nauseum, seems a little anticlimactic, despite her adding a little extra, albeit interesting, chronological detail, which has been debunked by many doctors and scientists about it taking 800 years to mutate, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a doctor and a scientist, so I'm not going to comment on that. That said, one of my examples is George Norrie. Ever since January, George Norrie has been saying, oh, I think it escaped from a lab and somebody took a bat to a market. And then so I'm like, well, did it escape from a lab or did somebody take an infected bat to a wet market? So anyway, sounds a little convoluted, but okay, George. And every time a scientist is on there, he always brings that up. And the 2 scientists I've heard him interview, they're both like, nope, we've looked at the markers. It's Mother Nature can do better than we can. It's definitely natural. So, but regardless, if we could blame it on China, that would be advantageous, even though our intelligence should have known what was going on the ground. The problem with Trump is he doesn't want to listen to anyone. And if it's an inconvenient truth for him, he doesn't want to do anything about it until the last minute. And he knew he had to do something about it because he's got a re-election coming up. So he can't alienate the side that would want him to do something about it, that wouldn't want our government to take responsibility. So anyway, number 3, she really shows the drug hydroxychloroquine here. the same drug as Trump kept rolling out for a time and was said Trump had financial interests. In part 1, I talk about those financial interests, and I find the below the fold news stories about that. Fauci funded research at Wuhan labs. That's like a standard practice amongst scientists. I mean, they fund things because they want to do studies to find out the efficacy of drugs and diseases. I don't know anything about Fauci's individual character, but that's what I got. Okay, 5, she's got a book coming out, so follow the money. And she did have a book coming out on April 14th. I go into that in my previous video. Okay, so the 6th thing that she said, she knows nothing about Ebola, it seems. So she basically said, and this is the actual statement. So the first outbreak of Ebola happened in the Democratic Republic of Congo in 1976. I then go into how I remember Ebola coming out in the summer in the early mid-90s when I had first moved into Hollywood. So, and I remember that, and it turns out there was an outbreak in South Africa in 1996. It's actually had a lot of outbreaks all over the world, which I didn't know, which I then speculated, maybe that's a Mandela effect for me, because I'm not sure. Or maybe Judy Mikovits is a time traveler, or in her universe from whenever she came, Ebola wasn't getting affected by, or human cells weren't being affected by Ebola cells until 1999. But even still, that's no excuse, and I'm not letting her off the hook that easy. Okay, so then this is her actual quote. And I get into totally analyzing it and dissecting it in the previous video, part 1. In 1999, I was working in Fort Detrick. So it looks like D and Trick. In Yosemite there. That was just unintelligible to me. But it sounds like Yosemite Sam. And my job was to teach Ebola how to infect human cells without killing them. And that was a part I really got into. I'm like, was she making a vaccine? Was she this? Was she that? In the end, I kind of got nothing. Ebola couldn't infect human cells until we took it into the laboratories and taught them, which makes no sense if it was 1999. Or she could be talking the collective we, and she could be saying, oh, well, we, whoever she worked for, even though she couldn't have been working for them at 1976 because she would have been 18, and if they had been doing this work to try and get them to attack human cells before then, she would have been probably 15 or 16, unless she's a time traveler. But she could be saying, we, the organization she worked for, took it into laboratories and taught them. So the chronology is not really correct there. And even then, she's not even kind of admitting culpability. She's admitting total culpability if this woman is responsible, and she worked for an organization that was responsible for making Ebola the killer that it is. So for that, she should be jailed, and she should still be in jail if that's the case. But anyway, I mean, it's not like she's making some kind of like confession that, oh my God, yes, I'm guilty. Nothing seemed to be there like that. Okay. So then there was a shorter video I found because all the pandemics have been taken down, which I believe is by design. I don't think it's that YouTube and Google were really that threatened by the information coming out. I think basically it's kind of like an initiation of humiliation, and they'd made such a big deal out of this video that it made it look, more real that it was taken down. And it's kind of, for any mainstream conspiracy theorist, it's kind of almost a rite of passage, even though this one happened almost prematurely. It's like Alex Jones getting all mad because he was banned, but that's par for the course. It's to make it look more authentic. But Alex Jones is still out there thriving. He's still making videos talking about eating his neighbor's ass. I'm going to eat my neighbor's ass during this pandemic. They better not come over here. I'll eat their ass. I mean, my God, do you see this? Do you see this insanity? It's like, these are the same people that talk about all the satanic people in Hollywood and everybody they don't agree with and all the supposed elites, when they are elites themselves, engaging in cannibalism. And this is what he's saying. Is he dog whistling or some shit? And my point is like, even if he thought of it, even if he thinks this is a joke or a funny one at that, it's just sick, man. And it wasn't that funny. I mean, it's funny that he's going so crazy, but the joke itself is actually not that funny and gets old pretty fast. So I found this other 3-minute video, and it looked like a Zoom meeting. And the exact quote was, in 2014, this is what Judy Mikovits said, in 2014, Ebola used to not infect human cells. So she's actually confessing here that Ebola didn't infect human cells until 2014, which we know is not even true. 1976, and then my memory of it happening in 1990. So this is not, I mean, the 1976 thing is not fabricated. And even if it was, I have a memory of it happening in the 1990s. So yeah, that's bullshit. So anyway, she goes, in 2014, Ebola used to not infect human cells, and now it is spread through the air. And I'm like, okay, I never knew it was spread through the air because I used to do a lot of research on Ebola when I was nervous about it, particularly in 2014. And it confirms it here. Sporadic cases may still occur. No one has contracted Ebola disease in Minnesota. Ebola is not spread through the air, food, or water. It is spread through... Okay, so that must have been from Minnesota outbreak, but it's not spread that way. I looked it up 6 ways till Sunday, and it's not spread through the air. Okay, so when last we left off, we had talked about Donald Trump's financial interests in hydroxychloroquine, and we traced some of his supporters. And again, it's not just that he stood to make money on hydroxychloroquine necessarily through his mutual fund, but he's also very, very beholden to certain people who have funded Republican campaigns and Republican parties. And when you become a president, you're beholden to a ton of people, because American politics, unfortunately, thrives on corporate bribery. And Donald Trump is sympathetic to corporations like no other. Although, don't get it twisted, Donald Trump is not the first or the last president who will take corporate bribery until and unless we change shit up. But anyway, so, of course, people are worried about their civil rights and they're worried about their livelihood, which I totally get. But somehow, people are being Karens at work. The headline reads, about as evil as it gets. A state reopens. Ohio urges employers to snitch on workers who stay home. Moreover, a lot of these workers don't have health care. So a lot of them don't have any choice but to not stay home. Which, I mean, we've really got to re-examine our medical system in that sense too. Oh, and the other thing, it's kind of funny, the other thing that Judy Mikovits was talking about in her video was doctors, well, it's not doctors who get paid $13,000. Everybody's making it sound like that too, like doctors do it because they want to be corrupt. It's the hospital that makes $13,000 if they claim that a person had COVID-19 at the time of death. It makes it easier on the hospital, I would say, because what happens is they averaged out the average treatment, differing hospitals, differing states, of about how much it takes to treat a COVID-19 patient. Then when you throw in a ventilator, it adds up to about $39,000. A lot, right? But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily blame that so much on the doctors because they're not trying to get any money for themselves. I would blame it on our money-grubbing, mafia-induced thuggish insurance companies and our money-grubbing and corrupt medical system. We have it's a for-profit medical system. So, of course, they're going to charge things up and overcharge and price gouge and all manner of stuff. We've been hearing about that for years. But yeah, it does suck. So anyway, this is you going back to work, having no health insurance, and same as it ever was. The state and your boss would rather kill you than keep you on unemployment. Oh, great trade-off. I mean, we've got two crappy candidates for president, and we've got two crappy options for, do we want to stay home and go bankrupt, or do we want to go back and work, risk infection, and keep working for the same crap wages we always have? This is what I'm saying. It's a shit paradigm. We're backed into a corner. Okay, so then infection rates were climbing. We talked about the meat packing plants, which are basically, they're prisons. They're like work shift prisons, and I addressed that all in my previous video. So infection rates were climbing at Nebraska meatpacking plants. Then health officials stopped reporting the numbers. Great. Okay, so then don't get me started. Actually, do get me started and get the truck started too on the truckers and how they're very unhappy at Donald Trump right now. I actually heard his speech on the radio. Well, I heard a portion of his speech on the radio where the truckers would not shut up behind him, and Trump claimed that they were honking as a sign of love. But guess again. And you say Trump tells the truth all the time. Yeah, just because somebody says something in blunt fashion does not mean what they're saying is honest. I mean, Trump's personality is right out there in plain sight, yo. So Why people are so beholden to them, or why a certain group of people are so beholden to them, conspiracy theorists in particular, when they should know better, I have no idea, because it's truth out in plain sight right here. That's another thing we need to be looking at too. Okay. Watch truck drivers interrupt Trump's press conference on a coronavirus vaccine with loud honking, called sign of love. Why truck drivers are protesting? The truck drivers were, in fact, protesting rock bottom rates. Since mid-April, drivers in Texas, California, Arizona, and Washington, D.C. have taken to the streets in their big rigs to demand government support. April rates for spot market loads, trucking jobs tendered in real time rather than through prearranged contract, were 54% lower than in April 2019, according to data from the load board company DAT. Rates in April fell to 5-year lows for refrigerated and flatbed loads. Meanwhile, the $2 trillion stimulus bill that Trump signed into law in late March did not provide any direct support for truck drivers. Oh man, we're going to be screwed if truck drivers get any more upset. DC, let's see. Okay. April rates, okay. Oh, wait, okay, no, this is okay. Meanwhile, the $2 trillion stimulus bill that Trump signed into law in late March did not provide any direct support for truck drivers. Several truck drivers who applied for a loan through a Small Business Administration told Business Insider that they were not able to get funding, putting their livelihoods at risk. There's a quote, "We don't need memes and news conferences saying we support truckers," Plummer previously told Business Insider. "We need fuel to stay low, rates to go up." And that's another thing, like oil's at a surplus, and down the street from me, it's fucking $4 a gallon. Okay, fuel to stay low, rates to go up, and some type of financial assistance until we recover. There are nearly 2 million truck drivers in the U.S. About 350,000 to 400,000 of them own and operate their own trucks, while many work for small companies in need of financial assistance. Cass Inform Systems said April freight volumes hit levels not seen since 2009, obliterating take-home pay for drivers. Though the $2 trillion CARES Act did little for truck drivers, Trump has pledged to help. Well, thank God. Let's hope he comes through, although I'm not going to hold my breath. Okay. Trump has rallied behind truck drivers in recent weeks. He told Fox and Friends earlier this month that truck drivers were being price gouged by the brokers who matched them with retailers and manufacturers, adding that he was going to take care of them. Until then, truck drivers like Plummer don't know whether they'll keep working at all. "We are risking our health and lives to take rates that wouldn't pay for our business," he said. So, and that's another thing too, because a truck driver called into a radio show that I was listening to about a month or a month and a half ago, and he was like, and he was so sweet, like he was happy-go-lucky and just talking. I think it was Coast to Coast, and he was talking with George Norrie, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, there's just no place that we can stop and use the restroom and this, that, or the other." So those truck drivers were hurting, and my problem is, I mean, if truck drivers are pissed, and if truck drivers stop working, that's when the food supply stops. Okay, so if you're watching this right now, then you probably already know that Trump implemented the Insurrection Act, or he's thinking of it. I'm filming it now, and I know this. So if you're watching it while I'm filming it, then I'll be a monkey's uncle. And I won't even know how that happened. That could be a conspiracy theory in and of itself, or a conspiracy. Okay, but anyway, so it's kind of ironic that he's edging at implementing martial law when not even a month or a month and a half ago, I would say a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months max, people were protesting the street with guns. Some of them not. But in any case, let me share with you some of the headlines just to give you a little collage of what's going on. Okay. Collage, and making it sound way prettier than it is. Okay. So here in the crime... Oh, wait. Oh, actually, you know what? I didn't get this publication, but it looks legit, man. Okay, and it's also true, based on other publications. Unarmed militia, one of the many groups protesting California coronavirus order at Capitol. So they're the unarmed ones. Next, from NBC News, we get gun-toting protesters storm Michigan Capitol, denounce stay-at-home measures. And then right here it gets heavier. Armed group gathers and walks through downtown Raleigh. Then we've got pro-Trump activists using Facebook groups to push anti-quarantine protests. Protesters carry rifles near the steps of Michigan State Capitol building in Lansing Wednesday. Gun-toting Republicans ignoring quarantine orders? Yes. Even coronavirus has become part of the culture wars. And that kind of sucks, though. Because at the very, very beginning of this pandemic, when I would suggest, well, maybe there's a happy medium way to do this, and, couldn't we just kind of keep the elderly and the immunocompromised safe while the rest of us go out and do stuff and get stuff for them and that kind of thing? And oh my God, my Republican friends, my one friend who likes Donald Trump, she loved it. And then all my liberal friends were they weren't mean about it, but they were well, no, see, you don't understand, and blah, blah, blah. I just think if we'd adopted a happy medium at the very beginning of this motherfucker, none of these motherfucking things would be happening. Well, except for the race wars. But anyway, I'm hedging at that, and what I'm posting here, or what I'm discussing here, kind of hedges at a race war even back then. And you'll see. Gun-toting Republicans ignoring quarantine orders. Yes, even coronavirus has become part of the culture wars. Okay, so protesters carry rifles near the steps of the Michigan State Capitol building in Lansing, Michigan. That was April 15th. So that was a month and a half ago. Flag-waving, honking protesters passed the Michigan Capitol on Wednesday to show their displeasure with Governor Gretchen Whitmer's order to keep people at home and businesses locked during the new coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak. And it says, pro-Trump protesters push back at stay-at-home orders. A growing number of protests are being staged. I like how they use the word staged, because that's pretty much what it approximates, across the U.S. to oppose stay-at-home orders amid the coronavirus pandemic. Michigan closes down Capitol in the face of death threats from armed protesters against Gov. Whitmer. Okay, now that's not cool. Death threats and guns just are still not cool. Because honestly, and I know this is going to sound crappy and cliche, but until people know how you care, nobody cares how much you know. And people who just want to act like assholes to forward whatever cause they're fomenting, it doesn't help, because nobody will take you seriously. They'll just think you're crazy. If a person gets really mad, even if they're correct, it just gives me an indication that they're not totally cognitively there. Even if you have a point, yo. You know what I'm saying? All right. So in any case, it's not going to get the message across the way you want it. Okay. So this is the article. The threats were made by protesters who plan to attend a Judgment Day protest at the Capitol. The protesters ostensibly oppose Whitmer's statewide shutdown orders meant to slow the spread of coronavirus. See, and they say slow the spread, not stop it. Dozens of posts and private invitation-only Facebook groups called for Whitmer to be hanged, lynched, shot, beaten, or beheaded. Oh boy. One suggested crowdfunding sources to hire a hitman and kill her. Facebook group called Michiganders Against Excessive Quarantine. Okay, so it came from a Facebook group called Michiganders Against Excessive Quarantine. Next comes the watering the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants, he concluded. Numerous other posts referred to Whitmer as a Nazi, spawn of the devil, wicked witch, Soros puppet, baby killer tyrant, and more, according to Detroit Metro Times. Others promised to attend upcoming protests, armed to death and without face masks, threatening to attack any police officers who dared confront them. Whitmer and Attorney General Dana Nessel have considered banning firearms from the Capitol building, but are awaiting the 6-member Michigan State Capitol Commission to figure out if they have the legal authority to do so. Now, wait a second. That's interesting. Okay, so let me look at the pictures of these people. So that guy's wearing, I guess they would be wearing face masks, but some of these look like Antifa face masks. And that's just a clown face mask and a bandana. I don't like Antifa's tactics either. But we always associate Antifa wearing face masks rather than the right-wingers. So that's very interesting. I forgot what I was going to say. It was about, I don't know, it was about Antifa, but whatever. Okay. If it was important, I'll remember it. Okay, so there are legislators who are wearing bulletproof vests to go to work. I don't blame them. Whitmer told ABC News last week, no one should be intimidated by something who's bringing in an assault rifle to their workplace. Newsweek reached out to Whitmer for comment. This story will be updated with any response. Okay, I don't know if this is Mandela effect for me, but growing up, I never remember so many states being so liberal in their gun laws. I don't know. I remember it being illegal in several places. Now, don't get me wrong, probably when guns were being legalized, I just wasn't paying attention, although I have watched the news for most of my life, and usually that makes the air. So I just remember guns being very prohibited in most states for all of my life. But all of a sudden, now that I'm older, even in Massachusetts, my home state, which seems a lot more liberal, although I think we have, I don't know, it seemed like when I was growing up there, it was really liberal. So we never had guns, but who knows? Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. All right. So Newsweek reached out to Whitmer for comment. The story will be updated with any response. All right. The story will be updated with any response. Okay, something about the following weekend, after an April 30th protest at the Capitol in which some protesters carried firearms, Confederate flags, nooses, and swastikas. Oh, see, now they got the Nazis involved. Whitmer said the protests depicted some of the worst racism and awful parts of our history in this country. Oh my God, that was like a fucking precursor to what the fuck's going on now. The behavior that you've seen, or the behavior that you're going to see, in all the clips is not representative of who we are in Michigan. Despite the demonstrations, polling has shown that a majority of Michigan residents support the strict lockdown measures put in place by Whitmer. Yes, and the cat agrees. Okay, so Michigan cancels legislative sessions to avoid armed protesters. Oh, but then we have here Nazi flags, swastikas, and all. Trump calls protesters against stay-at-home orders very responsible. He wants the economy opened up back again. I guarantee it. Although, and I wish I had a clip. Maybe I can, you know what? Maybe I can find the link and put it down below. Yesterday, my friend posted a video that President Trump recorded, I want to say in 2013. It was definitely during the Obama administration. And he was saying, and this might have something to do with the whole reset the economy conspiracy theory. He was saying that what you got to do is shut the economy down and then people will be chomping at the bit to go back to work. Because it's his assertion that people make too much on unemployment and all that other crap, which they don't. I don't know where people make that assessment. But anyway, so that was Trump's idea back during the Obama administration. I don't think he was running for president then because it was 2013, but he actually fucking said this on Fox News. Oh yeah, you got to get the economy to shut down and then people realize what they lost and they'll be wanting to go back to work. So I don't know if he's orchestrated this go around, because he was bragging an awful lot about the economy before the coronavirus hit. And I think he started panicking when he realized he had to shut down because he dragged his feet. He dragged his feet trying to respond to this, or not responding to this. So, and he also fired his entire pandemic team. So who knew that'd bite him in the ass? Oh God. Okay, the cat's getting uppity, but the cat's getting uppity like the gun protesters. I'm gonna have to play with him and come back. He's very, very high maintenance. All right. Oh, just as he calmed down, he got up and did that thing where they go like that. Okay. Anyway, so we've got that, but then here's the thing. So Trump calls protesters against stay-at-home orders very responsible. But here's the funny part. Well, not haha funny, but below he is the post where he praises the Michigan protesters, and they are predominantly white. The governor of Michigan should give a little and put out the fire. See, that's me going back to his sexist hearkenings. The government of Michigan should get a little and put out the fire. These are very good people, but they're angry. They want their lives back again safely. See them, talk to them, make a deal. Okay, so that's white people with guns. And then black people who are upset about the George Floyd thing. These thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen. He doesn't give a shit about the memory of George Floyd. Just spoke with Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way. Any difficulty and we will assume control. But when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you. And that's actually a pretty racist reference from something else. I had an example of it, but I don't have it for the purposes of this video. So you see where his allegiances lie. If it doesn't fit Trump's agenda, and it doesn't fit Trump's color scheme, he will not agree with it. All right. But you see a precursor to it right here in The Guardian. Armed black citizens escort Michigan lawmakers to Capitol after volatile right-wing protest. And one of those lawmakers was a black woman. So, I mean, already right there, I'm like, are they trying to stoke a race war? So creepy. Well, now they got the race war. And here's my theory. Here's my hypothesis. I think cop violence happens every day to white people, black people, but predominantly black people. I think it just depends on when they air it on the news. I mean, CNN, News Radio, they've got like probably about a 24-minute span in which to get all the news of the day. And they run it for about maybe like 12 hours and then maybe start to change it up a little bit after 6 or 8 hours and add a new story or two. But it's like, the news cannot be that homogenized. It cannot be that homogenized across the world. You know what I'm saying? So obviously Reuters and the AP handle most of it. They dictate which stories will be aired on a daily basis. So it's not that I think that certain news stories are fake or that they're propped up. It's like what do they choose to air and when do they choose to air it? What do they choose to report on and when do they choose to report it? Now, the George Floyd thing was very, very ugly. And yeah, and I know some people are going to be crying fake news, but oh God, you know what? Even in the remote chance that it is fake, shit like that happens every day. You just don't hear about it until the mainstream media wants you to. And also and you know what? You never know. Trump might have had a little to do with it because I don't think he really necessarily minds there being a race war. But it's hard to say because he also wants his economy back. But then back in 2013, he wanted to freeze the economy. So yeah, it'd be all fucked up. I'm gonna have to do a little more digging to see if I can make any assertions and assessments about that. All right, moving right along. Okay, set us free. There's a guy not wearing a mask and he's got a beard. He can't be a Republican. He looks like a hippie man. Okay. Trolls and bots are flooding social media with disinformation, encouraging states to end quarantine. Well, could be true. I mean, I think there are all kinds of trolls and bots and imposters online. So let's see what this says. Oh, actually, no, here it is. Because this is who it's backed by. This is what one of the movements is backed by. Robert Mercer, man behind Cambridge Analytica, is funding anti-shutdown protests. Now, Cambridge Analytica, first of all, Robert Mercer is or was a very big supporter of Trump, financially especially. Second of all, I know, you don't like that either. And you're orange. My cat's orange. You probably don't like that Trump is orange and you're orange. And then and you don't like when people make fun of orange hair. So, oh my God, what was I saying? Oh yeah, before I was so rudely interrupted. He's licking my leg. Cambridge Analytica basically did psychological assessments of people on Facebook. Ow, now he's biting my leg. They did psychological assessments of people on Facebook and kind of tailored their news feeds to those people. And I wouldn't be surprised if Facebook had whole psychological protests on us all based on what we post. It's like their homemade FBI files. It's like, what is Facebook? What are the initials of Facebook? FB. What is your page about? You. What do you call yourself? I. FBI. Boom. I should probably get off of it, but I shouldn't. Okay, I'm going to get off this right now. Ouch. All right, viewers, we're back. He's sleeping in his bedroom, which is my walk-in closet. I played with him, I fed him, and took about an hour and a half, but he's down again now. Okay, so, all right. So I'm going back to the protests and how they were funded. Let me first preface what I said about cops as an apology. I think it's a high-stress job. I think violence between cop and civilian can occur, but on the whole, I'm not saying that all cops are bad or all cops do that all of the time. Of course not. So if you're a cop or if you have a cop in your family, that was not meant as a diss or an insult. But I also don't think that, obviously most acts of violence across the U.S. and most race-on-race acts of violence or arguments or anything like that are not broadcast. It's very rare. Sorry to be such a downer. But then again, what I'm talking about is kind of downerish until we get to the end of our video, which hopefully it'll be a little more upbeat. Okay, so Robert Mercer, man behind Cambridge Analytica, is funding anti-shutdown protests. Okay, so let's see. Okay. After investigating the sources of advertisements and other efforts to protest lockdown and social distancing measures among American states, the Washington Post reports that many of the seemingly scattered spontaneous outbursts of citizen activism reflect deeply interwoven networks of conservative and libertarian nonprofit organizations. Okay. For example, some Facebook advertisements are funded by a group known as the Convention of States, a project launched in 2015 by the donations of Robert Mercer, the billionaire hedge fund manager. Oh, there's a helicopter. All right, they were protesting down the street from me, yo. It got violent, but there's a curfew, so I think they're gone in now. Okay, Robert Mercer, the billionaire hedge fund manager who Vox describes as the creator of Cambridge Analytica and a patron of the Breitbart News Network. You already know that's stacked, right? Breitbart, look it up. The Convention of States' purpose is to curtail federal power. Now it is utilizing its digital resources and national network to organize demonstrations throughout the country. The Post suggests that President Donald J. Trump's recent tweets and comments may be catalyzing protest action. After saying in a tweet that people should liberate states, tens of thousands of people joined Facebook groups calling for protests in Pennsylvania and Ohio. And that's, of course, because Donald Trump can't do it himself. It's a states' rights issue, I guess, or something, from what I understand. Nevertheless, the Post reports that while these efforts do in part reflect real local feelings on the COVID-19 crisis, the interconnectedness of those who promote the activism from behind the scenes is not to be understated. In Texas, the Texas Public Policy Foundation has vocally opposed local lockdown measures. In 2011, the Convention of States donated approximately $100,000 to the foundation. The Convention of States itself has received funding from Donors Trust, a financial conduit that does not disclose its donors. Donors Trust has also provided financial support to the Idaho Freedom Foundation, which encourages... I guess I didn't find that part important. Okay, sorry about that. The Post writes that the national spread of the protests may make the push against stay-at-home orders seem more popular than it really is. Polling by Quinnipiac University indicates that when asked, do you support or oppose stay-at-home order on a national level, 81% of respondents answered support, and the majority was sustained across Republican, Democrat, and independent demographics. When asked, do you think President Trump has acted too aggressively in response to the coronavirus, not aggressively enough, or his response has been about right, about 55% of respondents answered not enough. Okay. About a week or so ago, Donald Trump has offered pseudo-encouragement by tweeting that they need to liberate states like Michigan, Minnesota, and Virginia. The same rhetoric that is being used at these protests has been spreading like wildfire on social media as bots and trolls attempt to use disinformation to get states to reopen. Christopher Boozy, the founder of bot tracking platform Bot Sentinel, conducted a Twitter analysis for Business Insider and found bots and trolls are using hashtags like ReopenNC, Reopen America Now, Stop the Madness, End the Shutdown, and Operation Gridlock to spread disinformation. According to Boozy, the bots and trolls are spreading conspiracy theories about Democrats wanting to hurt the economy or make Trump look bad. See, and that's the thing. It's like, maybe Democrats want to hurt the economy, but Trump sure does not want to look bad. He was flying high on that stock market. Of course, the stock market don't represent what the rest of us are going through. All right. Democrats trying to take away people's civil liberties and Democrats trying to prevent people from voting. Well, that's a whole other fish to be fried. The accounts are also using false data to underplay the threat of the coronavirus. So it could be not. I just thought it was interesting. Okay, here's the last part of it. So in mid-March, the Trump administration was going to lock down the entire country and enforce this lockdown with soldiers on the streets. Oh, shoot, I didn't get the part of that. Oh, well. The White House's National Security Council later treated that these claims were false. That was just some of the disinformation. Okay, so it sounds like they were saying that Trump was going to be more aggressive than he was with the whole lockdown. That was just some of the disinformation that's been spread in social media by inauthentic sources. And then Dan B writes, when libtards like this are doing everything to stop America from reopening, you know this has nothing to do with protecting us from COVID-19. Yeah, they're just standing up in a building protesting, although it seems kind of silly to protest a virus because you don't... Well, actually, I don't know. They're probably not protesting a virus, but it's like... I don't know. It just seems silly either way. You can't negotiate with a virus, and it just seems silly that we, the people, are fighting with each other about it. But that's how it came to this. Okay, social media companies are making some efforts to combat this problem. Facebook, for instance, has been taking down pages and posts promoting anti-quarantine protests. Twitter has been attempting to remove posts that spread disinformation about the COVID-19 outbreak, but it's clear the social media companies are struggling to keep up. Of course, now Mark Zuckerberg won't, disagrees that we should fact check Donald Trump. So I don't know. This thing is all over the place. I mean, you can kind of see what a stranglehold Donald Trump has on certain people. That said, I kind of wish we could go back to the old days where I could go onto YouTube and find any kind of conspiracy theory video I wanted, but that's becoming increasingly difficult. And I can see people's concerns because you really can't criminalize. It's still criminalizing freedom of speech if the penalties are too harsh for somebody posting disinformation. So I don't mind there being a disclaimer under something, because the way I figure it is this. It's just people who already agree with it are just going to more strongly adhere to what they believe, and they're going to more strongly believe in it. People who don't believe in it will be warned, but they can choose. Like, it'll be out there. It's free speech. It can be chosen. And plus, I just think it's so interesting, like different viewpoints and stuff. So yeah, I actually don't mind maybe a disclaimer under things. And I know some people think I'm being too stringent, but hey, happy medium. Like the way I wanted to handle the coronavirus and have people still keep working. But apparently, according to my Donald Trump 11 friend, she loved it, and my liberal friend had all kinds of arguments for it. So I don't know, whatever the fuck. Okay, in terms of the people protesting in person, many have claimed these protests themselves are not entirely organic in nature. The Guardian has reported that some protests have been backed by wealthy conservative groups, and it appears, according to BuzzFeed, that one protest in Michigan was funded by the family of Trump's education secretary, Betsy DeVos. Oh yes, I've read it before. Okay. Binkowski says it's likely foreign actors that are looking to foment chaos in the United States are contributing to the spread of disinformation. Oh, why can't people from other countries leave our country alone? And the promotion of anti-quarantine protests, similar to gatherings and protests that were organized and stoked by Russian actors during the 2016 election. See, I never really investigated the whole Russian bot thing too much. I suppose it could be a thing. I don't know. I mean, I guess if this could be a thing, and I'm not saying this is a thing, I'm saying it's interesting that I found this. And it could be a thing. Okay. She believes that the disinformation is being spread by trolls and bots, but also by useful idiots. Empowering violent extremists is a very old method for collapsing unstable states. Binkowski says, this is the end result of weaponized disinformation. Yeah, I think disinformation can be weaponized, especially if it puts us in danger, that's for sure. But I still think they should just have disclaimers rather than censorship, full-on censorship. It's doing its job. It would have been the virus, or it would have been something like a fire or a hurricane or an earthquake, which I think we're kind of having all those this year. Hurricanes coming up from Mexico. We've had a few earthquakes in Los Angeles. They're setting fires at things. Oh, baby, we've got it covered. But disinformation purveyors are nothing if not opportunistic. No shit. Bots and trolls are spreading disinformation online that could end up putting countless lives in danger, and Binkowski believes reporters aren't being critical enough when they're covering the issue. We're already seeing states like Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee announcing they will soon ease quarantine restrictions so that they can attempt to return to business as usual. Okay, and I think that's, okay. No, I think that's it. I think I just did snippets, because again, like I told you, it'd be long as fuck if I didn't. Okay, the last thing we're going to get to is actually one of my first points of outrage, and it all started with the 76 station and the oil surplus. And and by the way, my friend and I made a Mandela effect video about the 76 station. Well, it's about 76 stations and gas stations. It was about a year and a half ago. Less than a year ago. I don't know if I want to post it or not. I think it's okay. It could be fun. It's kind of funny, but anyway. All right, but my friend swears she has a Mandela effect about the 76 station. Anyway, so 76 station, they look lovely. They look prettier than they really are. Let's just put it that way. They look really pretty at night, though, actually. And as you can see, the 76 station that I have a picture of here, and it's a current picture, has gas prices of $3.79, $3.89, and $3.99. For 20 cents more, you get the good stuff. So, like, a few weeks ago, there was, I was walking to my coffee shop for the first time in forever. This is the first time I'd gone out to do anything. And I was walking there, and I noticed all this yellow police tape. So I said to myself, so this is what I wrote online. I said, so this morning we had a bomb threat just up the street from my place. A guy wanted to blow up the 76th gas station for still charging $4 a gallon when there was a surplus. And as we can see, right now, Donald Trump, underneath all of our noses, because it just seems like nobody's talking about this, or this is hardly a buzz online, is in the process of rolling back more and more and more environmental protections, because that's what billionaires and millionaires do. Unless, of course, they're that odd and strange billionaire who wants a Green New Deal and wants us to get on green power. Donald Trump has been working on deregulating things for a really long time. Oil is very important to him, up to and including that slip up that he made one time. I can't remember exactly when it was. Sorry, I'm usually more accurate in my citations. But where he was talking about, he said something about we were militarily occupying some place in the Middle East. And then he said, don't worry, we secured all the oil. We got all the oil. So obviously we see where his interests lie. Now, for a time, I thought, maybe there's some kind of alternate power source that they want to get us off oil for. And since he's teaming up with Elon Musk, who, by the way, also wants us to get back to work, but to Elon Musk's credit, he says that he will go to jail himself if they come and arrest him for being open. And also, too, I saw an ad that I could get a job at Tesla if I wanted to. You're right. That would be so weird. But anyway, this is really freaky. So 64 rollbacks completed, 34 rollbacks in process. This is how big business gets around tons of shit. And this is how they bribe each other. This is how they bribe Donald Trump for him to roll back environmental restrictions on businesses so that they don't have to pay. They pay less, and they pay less in taxes, and they pay less in everything. The other thing that Trump has done is that he's essentially cut, what he's cut during this whole fiasco is he's cut payroll tax, he has cut capital gains tax, which means that's good if you trade on Wall Street, and especially the more profits you stand to make, the better your earnings. But he hasn't cut anything for us. He hasn't cut any taxes for the little man. And I think the most telling thing is that in 2017, 83% of tax cuts went to the top 1%. So if that doesn't make you mad, I don't know what does. So anyway, he's working on it. And this is not to be confused with global warming. This is to be confused with cold, hard American capitalism and what the big corporations can get around. And again, 71% of the pollution created on this planet is by major corporations. This is the thing. You guys want to worry about 5G. This is the thing that's giving us cancer. This is the thing. 5G maybe, but again, like I told you, my parents were in Denmark about a year ago. They'd had 5G for a while. Nobody was sick, and people in other continents and countries that do not have 5G yet now are still getting coronavirus. Okay, so basically, again, this morning, we had a bomb threat just up the street from my place. A guy wanted to blow up the 76 gas station for still charging $4 a gallon when there was a surplus. Meantime, Trump is using this pandemic to his advantage to roll back as many environmental protections as he can, it seems, while we are all otherwise preoccupied. So perhaps he doesn't mind letting the oil industry take one for the team while he does the bidding of the highest bidders. Anyway, boom. Okay, So this is the article about it in the New York Times. After 3 years in office, the Trump administration has dismantled most of the major climate and environmental policies the president promised to undo. So this was a deal that he made going into office already. I mean, we see where his allegiance lies. So that's it. And now I have a hypothesis, not a theory. And I just think it's interesting that Al Gore was all about the environment. And I know a lot of people think, oh, that's propaganda, blah, blah, blah. And maybe it was. Maybe he had a twist and an angle on it. A lot of people seem to think that. But I'm starting to wonder if the reason for Al Gore's losing to George Bush was not just because the Bushes were the Bushes, like one of the most prominent, that's the word I'm looking for, prominent political crime families in the country, that everybody seems to forget how much the Bush family sucked and how much George Bush sucked as a president. Sorry to say. And actually, one conspiracy channel who I think is a little more trustworthy had a video that talked about the rebranding of Bush. Like, oh yeah, we're all so distracted by how sucky Donald Trump is. Don't forget Bush is bad. And then you would see like all these people online posting about, oh, I miss George W. I miss George W. Yeah, he's a total war criminal president. And 9/11 happened on his watch. And there's speculation that the Bush family was involved because they were hanging out with the Bin Ladens on the day that it happened. And the Bin Ladens got a special flight out, so yada, yada, yada. Need I have to remind you? So anyway, aside from being a more prominent political family than Al Gore was for the environment. Now, it may all been rhetorical. Maybe he wouldn't have done much. And God knows, if we had had a Republican Congress, they probably, due to checks and balances, wouldn't have let him get a lot passed. But a part of me wonders if big business did not want him coming to office because he might try and regulate their ass. All right, so that's my piece. Make of it what you will. Okay, so Donald Trump, he's still talking. Anti-lockdown protesters confront reporter on the job. I saw this video. It was really obnoxious. And Donald Trump still cheering it on. People can't get enough of this. Great, people. Okay, but here's my problem. And this tweet says it all in a nutshell. By the guillotine shouter. Okay, guillotine. If you want an example of how housebroken Americans are right now, there's mass protests in several states. They aren't demanding rent freezes or UBI, that's universal basic income, or health care. They're demanding the right to go out and die to keep making the ruling class richer. Don't be mistaken. States are opening back up for economic reasons, not because it's safe so you be safe. And then one of my friends wrote, because he was frustrated one morning, he wrote online, the U.S. government wants you back at work to make money for the rich people. Are we born only to be consumers and contributors to the economy? I don't want the world to return to the way it was. Do any of us really like working 2 or more jobs to make ends meet? Man, that's the thing. I have a confession to make. I don't miss our society. I don't miss the rat race. I don't miss getting up to go to a more or less thankless job, 9 to 5. I don't. I set my schedule every day. I do creative shit. I've been collecting books over the years. I've got over 1,000 of them. I've got my DVDs. It's like I've got home improvement projects. I don't know. I'm kind of shamelessly okay right now. Knock on wood. Yeah. So I don't know. Whatever. I keep busy regardless. And I don't miss much of what our former shadow of society was. Now, am I hoping that we don't go back to it? No. I hope we go back to some semblance of it. But right now, I'm good. All right. Now here is a tweet from, I cut the screen off. Amber Sparks. And she's talking about the American workforce. People are like, how are these people refusing to wear masks in stores? But when I worked in retail, people would regularly take a dump in the dressing rooms. So what I'm saying is maybe lower your expectations for humanity. Like, obviously she's not using it as an excuse, but it's like, it kind of just shows how stressful it can be to work on the front lines. And that's another case in point with grocery store workers. Essential workers describe coronavirus pandemic experiences. Grocery workers are keeping Americans alive during the COVID-19 pandemic. How to protect essential workers during COVID-19. So the essential workers in my store are making $2 more an hour, but that's only the cashiers. In California, we're actually kind of lucky. I don't know how we got this luck, and probably no other states are doing this. But if you're on unemployment, you get $600 extra a week until like the end of July. That's crazy. So right now it almost makes no more sense for any of us to work, and so that's why some of the baggers are not working. But you know what? I don't mind it, because honestly, Stephanie Kelton, who's Bernie Sanders' financial advisor, whether you agree with Bernie Sanders or not, she basically said, well, if the government's asking you to stay home during a pandemic, then for all intents and purposes, your job is to stay home. That is your job. So you should get a universal basic income for that. I kind of like that theory. I think it's interesting. Okay. So this is from former Labor Secretary Robert Reich. He's now a college professor. I really like a lot of what he has to say regarding human rights and workers' rights and so on and so forth. In no other nation have experts in public health and emergency preparedness been pushed aside and replaced by political cronies like Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, who in turn has been advised by Trump donors and Fox News celebrities. In no other advanced nation has COVID-19 forced so many average citizens into poverty so quickly. The Urban Institute reports that more than 30% of American adults have had to reduce their spending on food. Elsewhere around the world, governments are providing generous income support, not in the U.S. Why is America so different from other advanced nations facing the same coronavirus threat? Why has everything gone so tragically wrong? Some of it is due to Trump and his hapless, corrupt collection of grifters, buffoons, sycophants, lobbyists, and relatives, but there are also deeper roots. The coronavirus has been especially potent in the U.S. because America is the only industrial nation lacking universal health care. The only industrialized nation, you guys. So all that price gouging again, charging $13,000 to diagnose somebody with COVID-19 and $39,000 to use a ventilator, that price hiking would not go up if we did not have privatized companies running our for-profit medical insurance scam companies. Our for-profit medical system, which, by the way, incentivizes sickness, because the more people are sick, the more money they stand to gain and pass around. All right. So the coronavirus has been especially potent in the U.S. We're the only industrialized nation lacking universal health care. Many families have been reluctant to see doctors or check into emergency rooms for fear of racking up large bills. America is also only one of 22 advanced nations failing to give all workers some form of paid sick leave. See, and that's a problem too, because if you're sick, you gotta go in. As a result, many American workers have remained on the job when they should have been home. Adding to this is the skimpiness of unemployment benefits in America, providing less support in the first year of unemployment than those in any other advanced country. But Trump will like that, because you'll be begging to go back to work. You'll be begging to go back to work when you realize you can't make ends meet and you just want society to go back to the way it was. I never cared for our society that much. Okay. American workplaces are also more dangerous. Even before COVID-19 ripped through meat packers and warehouses, fatality rates were higher among American workers than European. Even before the pandemic robbed Americans of their jobs and incomes, average wage growth in the U.S. had lagged behind average wage growth in most other advanced countries. Since 1980, American workers' share of total of national income has declined more than in any other rich nation. Since 1980, American workers' share of total national income has declined more than any other rich nation. And when the hell was the last time minimum wage went up? Seriously. I watched this show. It starred Josh Brolin, and it was called Mr. Sterling, and it came out about, I want to say 2002. And so in 2002, he was a politician, and there was a scene, and I want to say he was in the House of Representatives, but they were talking about minimum wage versus cost of living and comparing it proportionally to the 1960s. And I think minimum wage back then was like $7.63 an hour. But basically he came up with the math, and he said concurrent or comparatively to what people were making in the 1960s, proportionately, we should be up to $18 an hour as a minimum wage. But what's happened is that CEOs are refusing to raise the wage, and then they're skimming more and more and more off the top for themselves. Like CEOs, well, I'm going to give you an example. This isn't a direct quote. But for all I've studied about this, back in the 50s, CEOs used to make like the equivalent of roughly 100% of collectively what their workers were paid, just the collective of what all their workers were paid. Now they make like 500% of collectively what all their workers are paid. I mean, that's just an example, but it's gone up just grossly and disgustingly over the years. All right. In other nations, unions have long pushed. In other nations, unions have long pushed for safer working conditions and higher wages, but American workers are far less unionized than workers in other advanced economies. So who and what's to blame for the worst avoidable loss in American history? Partly Donald Trump's malfeasance, but the calamity is also due to America's longer-term failure to provide its people with basic support they need. What do you think? And he always asks us, what we think under his posts. But yeah, I mean, that's just the thing. And I will never understand why the general zeitgeist on YouTube and in conspiracy theory, well, I do kind of understand it in conspiracy theory videos and everything else, is that, oh, you can't trust it. You can't trust it. It's got to be a scam. It's probably because our government's been screwing us over so long we don't trust it. But the problem is there's too many big business interests in government. Now, if we got big business interests out of government, would it be perfect? No. But it'd be a hell of a lot better, and we might be able to breathe just a little bit easier, because when you reject big government, you get big business. And the problem is that there's too much money in government. Now, I know a lot of you are not going to agree with me, but it's just a thought I had. Moreover, this is what I find so ironic. For years we've been saying, including the conspiracy theorists, oh, big business corrupts government. Big money corrupts government. Let's get the money out of government. What do? We elect a corrupt billionaire as president. Great. Just great. Oh, God. It makes no sense. All right. So, and that $1,200 stimulus check. Do we think we're going to see another one anytime soon? No, because now we're distracted with all the rioting in the U.S. and God knows probably what else. But Michael Dowell from EdTech says, legally speaking, a corporation is a person. Remember that fight? Remember when corporations were fighting to be labeled people? So any corporate bailout should be limited to $1,200. Oh, I love it. Meanwhile, like airline companies are getting bailouts. And people with offshore tax havens are getting bailouts. All right. So this guy got charged, like they're trying to make healthcare free for coronavirus, because now they fucking know they have to. Like they have to kind of give us healthcare because we're only as strong as our weakest when it comes to this thing. This guy got charged $47,915.20 for his COVID-19 treatment. Oh my God. Robert Reich again. A few lessons I hope we all take away from this pandemic. Workers keep America going, not billionaires. Healthcare must be made right in this country. Made a right in this country. If we can afford trillions in corporate bailouts, we can afford Medicare for all and a Green New Deal. Yep. Because that's what they're doing. Like the Fed is just like pumping money. They're pumping money into big business right now. Tons of money, like more money than we would ever see, and certainly more than $1,200 a pop. This should make you mad. And this is what they don't want you to talk about, even though the information is liberally out there. Nobody wants you getting mad about this. If your economy requires people to consume things they don't need or even want, and to do more of it each year than the year before, just in order to keep the whole edifice from collapsing, then you need a different economy. And I think billionaires are actually starting to see this, because if the top of the pyramid starts to crumble and fall off a little, that's no big deal. It's a big skinny point, or it's a small skinny point. Well, small in relation to the rest of the pyramid. But if the bottom of the pyramid starts to crumble, you got a problem. You got some serious structural problems. I mean, it's a pyramid, so it's not as bad as like another shape, but it's still bad. So certain billionaires are supposedly starting to realize this. One of whom is Mark Cuban. Now, whatever you think of Mark Cuban, and I'm still not sure what I think of his financial plan, Mark Cuban says families should get $100,000 in stimulus checks with every 2 weeks, with one big catch. $1,000 check every 2 weeks. Mark Cuban has optimistic stimulus idea. Now, for a lot of us, that's still not enough, but oh well. It's better than the one-shot $1,200 deal. Okay. So on Sunday afternoon, billionaire Mark Cuban took to Twitter to share a series of ideas about how the federal government can leverage a trickle-up economics, because trickle-down never worked. It's like so many people now, it's coming out, thought that trickle-down was a joke, and it's never helped us. Okay. Because we all know that corrupt businessmen hoard at the top. That's how billionaires and millionaires get to be who they are. They hoard shit. Okay, so he wanted to leverage trickle-up economics to boost consumer demand and jumpstart the nation's economy. While noting that the federal Paycheck Protection Program was a great plan, difficult execution, the investor and owner of the Dallas Mavericks was unequivocal that something different is needed. The only thing that will save businesses is consumer demand, Cuban tweeted. And that's no joke, because when they were talking about reopening businesses again, and hopefully we could jumpstart our economy that way, there's one problem with that, and that is that the economy is really only as strong as consumer confidence. So if nobody wants to go out and patronize businesses, then it's still going to get kind of a weak start. But if we had to spend $1,000 like every 2 weeks, then it might be kind of a little bit stronger. So the only thing that will save businesses is consumer demand, Cuban tweeted. No amount of loans to businesses will save them or jobs if their customers aren't buying, and which is true. So there you go. There's a couple more headlines, one on Fox News, one on Business Insider. Mark Cuban proposes I keep wanting to say 100,000. I wish. 1,000 coronavirus stimulus check every 2 weeks. Mark Cuban, U.S. people should issue $1,000 checks that expire in 10 days. Interesting. Very, very interesting. And last but not least for this segment, this is a good quote, I thought. If a medically informed response to a pandemic creates economic hardships so serious that the economic impacts are more deadly than the virus, you change your fucking economic system, not your response to the disease. Condemning some to die of a preventable illness so that others don't die of engineered poverty is disgusting. Seriously, some of y'all dream so small. Our species can do so much better than this. The last thing I wanted to end on is just for anybody that's feeling down about the virus and, other things, but especially the virus, I guess there's some things to keep in mind. So, we've been through pandemics before. I know some people think this is orchestrated to take away our rights, but we've been through pandemics before where they didn't take away our rights. Spanish flu, case in point. Spanish flu. And also, I should say before the Spanish flu, yellow fever outbreak of 1793. And although it sounded awful, kind of what ended up happening is the founding fathers skipped town up to including George Washington, president at the time, and Thomas Jefferson. They left it to, it was a 10th Amendment thing. They left it to, Mayor Matthew Clarkson and Governor Thomas Mifflin to deal with. Banks were really, really forgiving on loans, even more forgiving than they are now. Somebody put it that banks were nicer back then. And they took care of people as best they can. I actually did a video on the yellow fever outbreak, about 4 videos. I think 3 videos back from this one when it's posted. But they got through it. Eventually it burned itself out. It lasted I want to say from June or July into October. And then the Spanish flu, we didn't have vaccines for that back then either. And just want to read you a couple passages from this article on Spanish flu. The Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, the deadliest in history, infected an estimated 500 million people worldwide, about 1/3 of the planet's population, and killed an estimated 20 20 million to 50 million victims, including some 675,000 Americans. The 1918 flu was the first observed in Europe, the United States, and parts of Asia before swiftly spreading around the world. At the time, there were no effective drugs or vaccines to treat this killer flu strain. Citizens were ordered to wear masks, schools, theaters, and businesses were shuttered, and bodies piled up in makeshift morgues before the virus ended its deadly global march. Fighting Spanish flu. When the 1918 flu hit, doctors and scientists were unsure what caused it or how to treat it. Unlike today, there were no effective vaccines or antiviral drugs, or drugs that treat the flu. The first licensed flu vaccine appeared in America in the 1940s. By the following decade, vaccine manufacturers could routinely produce vaccines that would help control and prevent future pandemics. But, that was like what they did. It kind of had to burn itself out. Now, they had a second wave that unfortunately killed a lot more youthful people and people without pre-existing conditions, but it did eventually go away. Knock on wood, we can only hope that with this one. And then if it does, then maybe we can choose whether or not we want to do the vaccine for that one. That said, there's another commercial that I love and I always cry at. There's this commercial that I always cry at with this lady whose mom was pregnant with her in like 1918 or 1919, and she was born in 1920, and it was a hard time for her mom, but they show us like pictures from back then. Masks looked very similar, kind of almost high-tech, like almost more high-tech than the ones we wear now, and I don't know, it just always makes me cry. And there she is, and she's like, we can get through this. So, anyway, for what it's worth, hopefully so. Alright, that's about all. Peace out.